You don't belong at this school. Margaret Foster's sharp voice echoed through the marble corridors of Potomac Academy, one of Washington, D.C.'s most prestigious private schools. The school principal strode purposefully toward the black woman waiting in the reception area, her heels clicking against the polished floor with military precision. Margaret had built her reputation on maintaining what she called the school's standards, and she was convinced that the woman before her didn't meet them. But Margaret had no idea who she was really confronting. The woman she was about to humiliate, Dr. Jasmine Carter, was one of the Pentagon's top defense analysts, holding a top-secret security clearance and advising on matters of national security. For the past 15 years, she had worked in the most classified levels of the Department of Defense, making decisions that affected the safety of millions of Americans. But right now, in her business casual attire, she looked like any other parent dropping off her child for the school day. Dr. Carter turned from where she'd been reviewing her daughter's homework folder, her expression calm but alert. At 42, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from years of briefing generals and Pentagon officials. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a simple but elegant blazer that somehow conveyed both professionalism and maternal warmth. "Excuse me?" Dr. Carter said, her voice steady and controlled, the same tone she used when questioning intelligence reports in high-level briefings. Margaret stepped closer, emboldened by what she interpreted as confusion. She was a tall, thin woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, and glasses that she wore like armor. "I said you don't belong at this school. There's clearly been some sort of misunderstanding about your daughter's enrollment." Dr. Carter carefully closed the homework folder and gave Margaret her full attention. "And what sort of misunderstanding would that be?" "Well," Margaret said, her tone dripping with condescension, "Potomac Academy has very specific admission requirements: academic excellence, family background, financial capability. We cater to a very particular demographic." The coded language wasn't lost on Dr. Carter. She'd heard it before, in different contexts, but the meaning was always the same. She glanced around the reception area, noting the portraits of distinguished alumni, the marble columns, the carefully curated atmosphere of exclusivity. "I see," Dr. Carter said calmly. "And you're concerned that my daughter doesn't meet these requirements?" "It's not just about your daughter," Margaret replied, lowering her voice but not her aggression. "It's about fit. Cultural fit. Potomac Academy has a reputation to maintain, and frankly, I'm not sure this is the right environment for someone like your daughter." "Someone like your daughter." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Dr. Carter had faced down terrorist analysts, grilled intelligence sources, and presented briefings to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She'd maintained her composure while discussing threats to national security, and kept her cool during classified operations that could affect global stability. But hearing someone question her daughter's right to quality education based on the color of her skin triggered something deeper than professional training. "Someone like my daughter," Dr. Carter repeated, her voice remaining level. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" Margaret glanced around nervously, suddenly aware that other parents and staff members were beginning to notice the conversation. "I think you know what I mean. This school has traditions, standards. We've built something very special here, and we need to protect that." Dr. Carter pulled out her phone, a gesture that made Margaret stiffen slightly. "Perhaps I should call someone who can help clarify the situation." "Your husband?" Margaret asked with a slight smirk. "I'm afraid this isn't something that can be resolved by having someone else fight your battles." Dr. Carter didn't respond to the provocation. Instead, she dialed a number from memory and waited. When someone answered, She spoke clearly enough for Margaret and the gathering staff to hear. "This is Dr. Carter. I'm having an issue at my daughter's school and may need to escalate this through proper channels. Can you patch me through to the secretary's office?" Margaret's confident expression began to waver. "Secretary's office? What secretary?" Dr. Carter continued her call. "Yes, Potomac Academy in Georgetown. The principal is suggesting that my daughter doesn't belong here and questioning our family's suitability for the school. Given my security clearance and position, I thought the Defense Department's legal counsel should be aware." The color drained from Margaret's face as the words sank in. Security clearance. Defense Department. Legal counsel. "Wait," Margaret stammered. "You work for the Defense Department?" Dr. Carter ended her call and turned back to Margaret with the same professional calm she used when briefing military leadership. "Dr. Jasmine Carter, Senior Defense Analyst, Pentagon. And you are?" The reception area had gone completely quiet. The school secretary looked up from her desk, wide-eyed. A few parents who had been chatting near the entrance stopped their conversations entirely. Even the maintenance staff paused in their work to listen. Margaret's mouth opened and closed as she processed this information. Pentagon. Senior Defense Analyst. This wasn't just any parent she'd tried to intimidate. I didn't realize," Margaret said weakly. I wasn't aware of your position." "My position?" Dr. Carter asked, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used in classified briefings. "And how exactly does my professional position relate to my daughter's education? Are you suggesting that a child's right to attend this school depends on their parents' job title?" "No, that's not what I meant," Margaret protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Dr. Carter took a step forward, not threatening, but with the presence of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of military officers. "Ms. Foster, let me explain something to you. I spend my days analyzing threats to our national security. I've briefed the Secretary of Defense on matters that affect millions of lives. I hold security clearances that allow me access to information most people can't even imagine." Margaret looked around desperately, seeking support from her staff, but found only uncomfortable silence and disapproving looks. "But more importantly," Dr. Carter continued, "I'm a mother who wants the best education for her daughter. I researched this school extensively. I reviewed your academic programs, your faculty credentials, your college placement statistics. My daughter earned her place here through her test scores and academic merit, not through any special consideration." The weight of her words settled over the reception area like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just any parent defending her child. This was someone who had dedicated her life to protecting her country. Someone whose judgment was trusted at the highest levels of government. "Ma'am, I apologize," Margaret said, her voice now small and shaky. "I clearly misunderstood the situation." "Did you?" Dr. Carter asked. "Or did you make exactly the assumptions you intended to make?" Before Margaret could answer, the school's board chairman, Robert Whitman, emerged from the hallway. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, who had heard raised voices and come to investigate. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking between Margaret and Dr. Carter. "Mr. Whitman," Margaret said quickly, "there's been a misunderstanding. I was just welcoming Dr. Carter to our school community." Dr. Carter looked at Margaret with raised eyebrows, then turned to Mr. Whitman. "Actually, Ms. Foster was explaining to me that my daughter and I don't belong at this school. She questioned our family's suitability and suggested there had been some sort of error in the admission process." Mr. Whitman's expression darkened as he processed this information. "Ms. Foster? Is this true?" Margaret's face flushed red. I was simply trying to understand the family's background, to ensure proper placement. By suggesting they don't belong here? Mr. Whitman asked, his voice sharp with disapproval. Dr. Carter intervened before Margaret could dig herself deeper. Mr. Whitman, I assume you're familiar with the school's non-discrimination policies and federal guidelines regarding educational institutions? Of course, he replied immediately. Then you understand that what just occurred here could potentially constitute a violation of those policies, Dr. Carter said calmly. As someone who works closely with federal agencies, I'm quite familiar with the legal implications of discrimination in educational settings. Mr. Whitman turned to Margaret, his face grave. Ms. Foster, I think you should return to your office. We'll discuss this privately later. Margaret nodded quickly, clearly eager to escape the situation she'd created. Of course, Dr. Carter, again, I apologize for any misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Doctor, Carter said firmly. It was a judgment based on assumptions about me and my daughter that had nothing to do with our qualifications or character. After Margaret retreated to her office, Mr. Whitman turned to Dr. Carter with genuine concern. Doctor? Carter, I cannot adequately express how sorry I am about this incident. Ms. Foster's behavior is completely unacceptable and does not represent the values of this institution. Dr. Carter studied his face, looking for sincerity. Mr. Whitman, I need to know that my daughter will be safe here, not just physically, but emotionally. I need to know that she'll be judged by her character and abilities, not by the color of her skin. You have my word, he said firmly, and you have my commitment that this will be thoroughly investigated. No child should ever feel unwelcome here because of their race or background. Later that day, Dr. Carter sat in her Pentagon office, reviewing intelligence reports on emerging global threats. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter Emma. Mom, the principal said some really nice things about me today during assembly. She talked about how proud the school is to have students from all different backgrounds. It was weird, but cool. Dr. Carter smiled grimly. Margaret Foster was learning, albeit the hard way. 3 days later, Mr. Whitman called Dr. Carter personally. I wanted to update you on our investigation, he said. Ms. Foster will be attending mandatory diversity training and will be on administrative probation. We're also implementing new protocols to ensure all families feel welcomed from their first interaction with our school. And Ms. Foster, specifically? Dr. Carter asked. She'll be meeting with our board to discuss her future here. Between you and me, I don't think that conversation will go well for her. Dr. Carter appreciated the update, but her real concern was Emma. How is my daughter adjusting? Wonderfully, Mr. Whitman said warmly. Her teachers rave about her academic performance and her kindness to other students. She's exactly the kind of student who makes our school better. A month later, Emma bounded into the car after school with a huge smile on her face. Mom, guess what? I made honor roll, and Ms. Foster personally congratulated me during the ceremony. She said she was proud to have me as a student here. Dr. Carter looked at her daughter through the rearview mirror. How did that make you feel? Emma considered this seriously, a trait she'd inherited from her analytical mother. Good, I guess, but also kind of sad for her. It's like she had to learn how to see me as a person instead of just, different. Dr. Carter was struck by her daughter's wisdom. At 12 years old, Emma understood something that many adults struggled with, that changing hearts and minds was possible. But it shouldn't be necessary. 6 months later, Dr. Carter was invited to speak at Potomac Academy's Career Day. She stood before a room full of students, including Emma, and talked about her work at the Pentagon, about serving her country, and about the importance of protecting democracy. After her presentation, a young white boy raised his hand. "Dr. Carter, do you ever get scared working with all those dangerous secrets?" Dr. Carter smiled. "You know what I learned? The most dangerous thing isn't secrets or threats from other countries. The most dangerous thing is when we stop seeing each other as individuals and start making judgments based on how people look or where they come from." The students listened intently as she continued. "In my job, I work with people from all different backgrounds, all different races and religions and countries. And I've learned that the best ideas, the strongest solutions, come when we include everyone's perspective." Emma beamed with pride from the front row, and Dr. Carter noticed that Margaret Foster, watching from the back of the classroom, was taking notes. After the presentation, Margaret approached Dr. Carter hesitantly. "Dr. Carter, I wanted to thank you for that presentation. And I wanted to apologize again for my behavior when Emma first enrolled." Dr. Carter studied the woman who had once tried to exclude her daughter. "Ms. Foster, I appreciate that, but what I really want to know is what you've learned from this experience." Margaret looked down at her hands, then back up at Dr. Carter. "I learned that I was letting fear and prejudice guide my decisions instead of facts and fairness. I thought I was protecting the school, but I was actually betraying everything it should stand for." "And how do you plan to do better?" Dr. Carter asked. "I've been working with a consultant on implicit bias," Margaret said, "and I've changed our enrollment procedures to ensure every family feels welcomed. But honestly, the biggest change is that I now question my first assumptions about people. I ask myself what I'm really seeing versus what I think I'm seeing." Dr. Carter nodded approvingly. "That's growth, Ms. Foster. And growth is always possible when people are willing to do the hard work." As they walked through the hallway together, Dr. Carter noticed the changes in the school. More diverse artwork on the walls, more inclusive language in the posted policies, and most importantly, a more welcoming atmosphere that seemed to embrace difference rather than merely tolerate it. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. A year later, Emma was thriving at Potomac Academy. She'd been elected to student council, made the honor roll every semester, and formed friendships across all demographic lines. More importantly, she'd learned that belonging wasn't something granted by others. It was something claimed through character, effort, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Dr. Carter's confrontation with Margaret Foster had become a catalyst for change throughout the school. New anti-bias training was implemented for all staff. Admissions procedures were reviewed and reformed. And, perhaps most significantly, the school culture shifted from one of exclusivity to one of excellence through inclusion. The story became a reminder that assumptions based on appearance can be both wrong and harmful. Margaret Foster had looked at Dr. Carter and seen only what her prejudices allowed her to see. She missed the intelligence, the dedication, the service to country, and the deep love of a mother fighting for her child's future. But the story also showed that confronting prejudice with dignity, facts, and unwavering principle could create lasting change. Dr. Carter didn't respond to discrimination with anger or threats. She responded with the quiet authority of someone who knew her worth and refused to let others diminish it. In the end, Potomac Academy became a better institution because someone had the courage to challenge its biases. Emma got the education she deserved, and Margaret Foster learned that true leadership means recognizing and correcting your mistakes, not just defending them. The Pentagon expert who was told she didn't belong had proven that belonging isn't about permission from others. It's about having the strength to claim your place and the wisdom to help others understand why everyone deserves that same opportunity. Never judge someone's worthiness based on appearance or assumptions. Never underestimate the power of quiet authority and principled resistance. And remember that the person you're trying to exclude might be the very person working every day to protect the freedoms you take for granted. Because sometimes the most important battles for equality happen not in courtrooms or legislatures, but in school hallways, where the next generation learns whether America's promises apply to everyone or just to some.